well, I said the word that has been used now is the chaos that has greeted what is happening in the United States with, with the Doge department. I said Doge now, yes, trying to see what exactly, trying to make government more efficient. It's unclear just how that is going to work. But this is what we are now being told. This is some of the revelations that have been unearthed around the USAID. I don't know what you make of it. Some people have said we should discard this information by Representative Scott Perry, that he's always peddling, will I say, conspiracy theories. But others say there is no smoke without fire. We should take a closer look at what he's saying. Where do you stand on this?
Thank you very much, Marco. It's a pleasure to see you. Are you looking younger or something? Now, let's look at this issue of the USAID. And let's go at it from this perspective that change is a constant in life. But there are always different reactions to change. Some people resist change. Some ignore it. Some people embrace it. But the best of all are the people who learn how to engineer change. I think we need to pay attention in Nigeria to what's going on. It's not irrelevant to us. First of all, let us come and take a good look at the USAID itself. What is USAID? It's United States Agency for International Development. Now, it was set up in 1961. Now, let nobody deceive themselves. When America set up the USAID, they really were not intending to go around the world developing nations of the world for them. Like, nobody ever has a Ministry of Defense. Every country has a Ministry of Defense or Department of Defense. Now, the purpose of that entity was actually to promote American interests all over the world. Unfortunately, if we look at after the Second World War, the Cold War era, post-Cold War, a lot of things have been happening. And this agency, because of its independence, which it won, I think, in 1998, because initially it was codified by Congress, but when it obtained its quote liberty, it began to do strange things across the world. So there are two ways we need to look at this thing. The Nigerian response, which should be the African response, actually. Then let us look at what's going on within America and why Americans, trust me, the scrapping of USAID and all the things that you see going on has a lot of popular support within the American society. Now, from the African perspective, it will be the perspective of beggar nations who know that American dollars will always make a difference in a nation where poverty has been weaponized. So the truth told is this. You were so right when you started out by mentioning DOGE, DOGE. That's the Department for Government Efficiency. Now, what we're looking at is the future. And if we ignore it, we will regret it. What you are looking at is change. The American government is going to be changing the way governance is done. Democratic governance is being done. And as it changes, the ripple effect is going to go around the world. Look, what USAID had become, with its budget of about $40 billion, it had become an agency of true corruption across the world. And the network of corruption is wide. I served, for example, let me put some perspective to this thing from the Nigerian perspective, from the Nigerian angle. I served as special advisor to 4 generations of CAN presidents. I recall very well that before we went for the congressional hearing in 2012 in Washington, we had received a lot of complaints, especially from Plateau State and from Benue, about some funding that was meant to be for northern Nigeria. And this funding was supposed to be coming, this was from America, it was American funds. It was meant to be for education and some other things, okay? Climate change, I think education mainly then. But they had noticed that Plateau State was somehow ignored, Benue was ignored, and a whole lot of the so-called funding was meant to be going to fund madrasas. Now, interestingly, they began to observe that some of this funding, now these are the things, this is the chatter from within the Christian community that was watching what was going on in Nigeria at that time. So they made a lot of complaints to us about that there's a funding coming on. And I remember very well there was a figure that was being quoted then, that about $600 million was supposed to be coming in, and it will end up with the Boko Haram. Now, let me just say this quickly for Nigerians to clarify something. If you want to understand the American position on international issues, you want to know that there are two Americas. The two Americas, they call one the real America and then the other America. The other America has, Dr. King spoke about it, is the America that tries to subvert what the real America stands for. It's a real America. You will find out that the US aid had become a tool for spreading strange things across the world. You'll find out that in India, where they asked for how many million did they spend in India? For what? A transgender clinic. Excuse me. How does that How is that a priority for India? Transgender clinics. If you look at the case of Nigeria as well, you'll see that, yes, US aid on the surface helps us to at least fill some gaps in our healthcare system. But the challenge is this. This thing is one of the things that is used to keep us beggarly. These are devices. There was a policy. I mean, somebody was talking about the U.S. policy towards Nigeria and African nations. The truth is, still today, U.S. has no policy towards Africa. We are not that significant in the scheme of things in Washington. Now, I think what Nigeria ought to do right now is this. We need to take advantage of the fact that the new man at the helm of affairs in America is very transactional. He's a deal maker. He really is not a politician. And that's why he comes and takes a hard look at everything and wonders why are we spending this amount of money in Afghanistan. Even if you listen to what's going on in Gaza and what his own proposals are, you are dealing with a very pragmatic person. What am I trying to point out to you? The network of corruption around the entire world. Nigeria is a simultaneous equation. Nobody should blame us for the degree of corruption in Nigeria alone. We'll take part of the blame. But also, we now see that there's also a foreign potency or a foreign portent to the corruption in Nigeria. Look, Nigeria is a great nation. Western region, remember, we have a television station ahead of Germany and France. The potential for greatness is in Nigeria. But there's been a lot of foreign intervention, proxy wars that have been fought on African soil. And if anything, we should rejoice right now as to what is going on in America, if you ask me. I think we need to be very happy about it, and we need to capitalize on it, even though the policy is America first, so-called. But let me tell you the truth. What defines America? They're going back to the foundation of the founding fathers. The founding fathers of America were of the opinion that no government should leave debts for the children or the next generations to pay. These are sound policies. And I'm telling you that right now in America, people are tired of the excesses. Look at what he did when he first came in. The gender confusion, where you have about 30-something classifications of he came in with his executive powers and began to write some of those things. So what we're seeing is two things. Well,
the one that really gets into many Nigerians is that a USAID, for instance, is funding terrorist activities in different parts of the world, including Boko Haram in Nigeria. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the Chief of Defense Staff in Nigeria has spoken quite a number of times about the fact that there is only as much that the military can do. Now, this information, I'm just wondering, because even the former president, Buhari, was also speaking along such lines. The question that I'm asking is, we definitely welcomed, let me use it that way, the USAID and such other initiatives into the country. Were we unaware of this information, or were we too timid to admit and consequently take them on?
Anybody who claims that we were unaware is being untruthful. Now, there's a saying in the Southwest that if a wall doesn't have any cracks in it, the lizards will not come into it. Let us not attempt to shift blame and responsibilities. Osama bin Laden was in Sudan from 1991, I think, to 1996, where he started perfecting the template of what we call global terrorism or local terrorism, the local face of a global entity. A lot of Nigerians visited him there. So what you saw that began to unfold, I was in Rio in 2001. All these things had started, the trickles of blood. We watched it in the fields. We watched the trickles turn into torrents. So already there was a global resurgence of terrorism, religious extremism, documented. Global. Even the United States of America, 9/11, you remember what happened to them. Now, this is what now transpired. When they saw what was happening, they began to look out for American interests. Now, the dodgy thing about this is that some of the administrations began to think, how do we protect America and deflect these wars to other nations? In fact, that was what led to what they call the pacification of terrorists with territories. Even Nigeria was on the block, if you don't realize it. And I will tell you one thing that we need to thank God for certain Nigerians, because when we heard about these things, and it was chatter, like I said, nobody's going to come and bring you a check and show you. We went to Washington for a congressional hearing. I think Chairman Smith was the one who, Chris Smith, was the one who chaired that congressional hearing. And we asked for three things. The first thing we asked for, I can remember that the State Department fought it to a standstill. The Secretary of State in particular, at that time serving, fought it to a standstill. We asked for the FTR, the Foreign Terrorist, FTO, the Foreign Terrorist Organization designation under Boko Haram. You would not believe what we heard at that political hearing. If not that we too had our facts and figures and were able to make a sound presentation. Now, why did we ask for that? Because we realized that by American policy, the moment the Boko Haram is declared to be an FTO, a foreign terrorist organization, American funding must not be found to find its way to them. And because America has a system of checks and balances, it will still be exposed. So what am I trying to point out to you is this. A certain administration in a dispensation in American government decided that the best way to protect American interests was to deflect the war to other nations of the world, to make friends with the people who the people who were responsible for 9/11 and the template that was created. And what they now did was that they used that to, in the hope that they will protect America. I don't know what kind of thinking that was, but they used that to destabilize other countries. Now, there's something you need to go and investigate that I think that was Benghazi helped us in Nigeria. When we left Washington, a powerful delegation ran to Nigeria to persuade our then president to deny all the work we had done in Washington, to ignore it and reject the FTO. Second, we also asked for something. We said American policy, the American dollars were being used to promote terrorism. And for me, the presentation we made then was very simple. They were pursuing a policy of religious dialogue. We were saying to them, you are talking about two voices, but there are three voices on the table. There's the voices of Christians, there's the voice of Muslims, and then there's a silent voice of terrorists. So at the end of the day, all this money you're using, you're making it look as if something is being done, whereas nothing is being done. You're just providing more cover.
So if we knew this, my apologies, if we knew all of these over the years, and just as you said, what have success, within what year and what year are we talking about here? And then what have been our foreign policy directive to, we're completely out of time, we just have just about 2 minutes. What should have been our position, and why does it look like we have been shying away from this reality? Is it out of timidity, out of ignorance? What exactly do you think has been going on, and what would you propose we do now?
Okay, quickly, let's look at that. Nigeria has a systemic problem. There's nothing wrong with Nigerians. We have a systemic problem. And I think the best way we can capture this is to look at what Sir Tafawa Balewa said in 1960. I think it was the 8th of October at the United Nations General Assembly. He said there was all this bloodshed was going to come. All this strife. He looked at the makeup of Nigeria, looked at the global balance. Nigeria was professing non-alignment at that time. But I'm telling you, he foresaw all this and he made a statement. He said his own name will have been long forgotten. Sir Tafawa Balewa. He said by the time people have forgotten his name and all this trouble start, Nigeria is going to be ready and the nations of the world are ready for peace. We should go and use what they call eternal truths to sort ourselves out. What are three eternal truths? Let's just sort out Nigeria quickly. Number one, stop hoping that two parallel lines will ever meet. Two, stop hoping that a compromised foundation can sustain a building structure that is successful. Number three, stop hoping that lies after 1,000 years will become a truth. It will not happen. It will never happen. So the point is this, is that Nigeria needs to look inwards. The shambolic, look, the discussion you had before I came on, the shambolic democracy that Nigeria has is more like a rehash of the Oyo Empire. This is not really a democratic republic. And all we need to do is to exercise ourselves, make these foundational corrections, and Nigeria will shoot to become a foremost nation of the world. Enough of all this. We don't need all this toxic hell, all this age, all these things. There's a systemic problem. We correct that, and we will be one of the foremost nations of the world in record.
Well, I think it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you very much for your intervention this morning, Reverend Ladi Thompson. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Pleasure is always mine.